This week, Camelot has signed treaties with Rose and the Golden Horde. A very interesting move. I am confident that not many people expected it, least of all myself. And yeah, people had questions, so I decided to do an interview thing and answer some of them. I just need to find them. Okay, so yeah, I'll read off the questions. I'll answer them as best I can, and then when we're done, I guess I'll post the two treaties on the forums, and then people can respond to them and share their thoughts. So the main questions other people had were, what were the motives behind signing Rose and TGH? Well, the motives behind both are very different. So with Rose, we're basically giving their new leadership like a fair shot. When they initially came to power, we treated them as a continuation of Harry's politics, and in fairness, they did act that way. But after that war, we were like, well, they're trying, at least in their war against Eclipse, to be more public. They're trying to mend relations with us. They didn't overtly proxy us, which was a nice change of pace. And also they brought in Villini, so it seems like they have a very different alliance now. And yeah, it would be good to work with some people. We have a lot of like former Camelot over there, so there's bridges we can build upon. TGH is very different. So with TGH, they were a rival, like you could call them that. With Rose, it was a very asymmetrical rivalry, right? Because they were quite unfair to us, we would say, and then they were supporting alliances that were hostile to us, right? So they weren't like a primary adversary for us, and we weren't a primary adversary to them because we were too small. Like their primary adversaries, I would say, are like Eclipse, Syndicate, TKR, maybe even Singularity, the other big alliances. So yeah, with TGH, we were on more of a level playing field. And both alliances very much didn't like each other. And we were making moves against each other to some small extent, almost constantly. So the treaty with them, I think, is to, how do I put it? It's to ease relations. It's basically, you could call it an advanced ceasefire. And hopefully, we can work together at some point. But in the short term, I think it's mainly about not being enemies. Which is itself, I guess, interesting because people don't usually forgive those sorts of grudges and like stop being enemies kind of at random. I guess from our perspective, like I think their motivation is that they have a new government, so they want to be able to reset and be able to do different things and choose their enemies. For us, like we didn't pick that rivalry either, so like we don't have a ton of incentive in continuing it, and also we kind of got what we wanted, right? So we were going to get attacked by them. We attacked them first. We cost them all tons and tons of money. Politically, I think they faced the backlash from plotting against us. There's no real point in continuing it. So yeah, that's the motivations behind signing, at least in terms of like the relationships. In terms of like a macro politics or like why we did it, I guess like there are other factors, but there are always other factors. So will we sign other Rose allies in the future? Oh, next question. Will we sign other Rose allies in the future? I think that is highly unlikely. So I'll be frank, I haven't spoken to Guardian in like 3 years. And even that might be like generous. It might be more like 6. I don't think we've ever had relations with Guardian. Like we see them in passing, but like not really. With what's it called, Arkham, like Seb is fine, but his second in command, EFA head, is an interesting character. I don't foresee that treaty happening. Black Knights and like Name Withheld and like those people in Penta, those would be more interesting ties. Those are things that people probably wouldn't rule out. They would be ruled out though. So Black Knights has a bunch of like old guard, like really, really old guard, that has forbidden pretty much any treaties between our alliances. And so like we can work with them on things from time to time, but like there's no chance of a treaty happening there. And what's it called? Name Withheld. I believe they're in a similar position where they have old guard that would just like prevent anything happening. So I doubt that we would sign any other Rose allies. Oh, and TFP. This is an interesting one. So we have been on again, off again allies of the Fighting Pacifists for 3 or 4 years now. So I would never rule them out. I would never say we're never going to sign TFP. But I doubt it. I think we're on one of like the off phases, right, where we don't sign each other for like 8 months, and then we sign each other for like a few months, and then we have another 8 months or whatever. So I think we were allied to them back in November. So I think we're still on one of those off periods. Yeah, I don't think they have any other major allies that I'm aware of. I think that rules them all out. And then from that, I guess you could take that we're more of a peripheral of Rose. We're not like a member of their sphere. I wouldn't describe us as that anyway. Next question. Will we share colors with Rose? So no, we are a maroon alliance, unless Alex adds another awesome shade of red, like a scarlet or other cool colors. But yeah, no, Rose is pink, we're maroon. We're not going to give that up anytime soon. Next question. Are we planning on doing something such as a war with Rose Sphere in the near future? No, I guess. So we aren't planning on fighting anytime soon, at least as like Camelot. I don't know what Rose is doing. They have very low infra. I think Rose, from my understanding going into it, they've had like 4 months of war. They fought us, they fought Eclipse. My understanding is they're not looking for a fight. And with Camelot, we're still recovering from the Rose War. And I know that sounds like it's a long time ago, but it's actually only a few months ago. And we are one of the poorer alliances in the top 30. Our bank is probably more comparable to rank 50 alliances than it is top 10 alliances. So yeah, we have no interest in fighting any wars anytime soon, but we do have nukes, we have like deterrence, and I think we have some war chest materials, so if people pick a fight, we can defend ourselves. Why does Stratton Oakmont have that many nukes and missiles? So we started snacking nukes in December in anticipation of a Rose proxies or a Rose attack at the end of the nap. So when we were negotiating peace with Rose back in December, we wanted to skip a nap altogether, the logic being that if we were actually resetting relations with them, there would be no need for a nap. And if they proxied us, then we could retaliate directly. So there would be more of a level playing field. They disagreed. They wanted a 3-month nap, and then this put us in line with, what's it called? Syndicate and EVH. So we anticipated that Rose would either hit us alongside TS and EVH, or they would hit us and then go into the others, or the vice versa, right? So we would end up getting rolled on the same period. So we thought, well, we might as well just stack nukes and missiles now, and then by the time that war comes, we'll have a ton of them, and we'll actually be able to do meaningful damage. But yeah, hasn't happened. I don't see a reason in like decommissioning the nukes, I guess. Like they're not massively expensive. I think Stratton Oakmont though, I was a bit annoyed. I was like, this dude is way above MMR. He has way more nukes than he should have, and I thought we had more nukes distributed across the alliance, so it means some people are behind on MMR. But yeah, I'm not going to tell him to decommission them. Okay, so these are some other questions by the interviewers. How did you fix relations with Rose after the recent war? So we've known each other like forever. So like those relations were never truly like gone, but I also wouldn't call them mended. So like, how do I put it? We might get along with like 1 or 2 people in Rose or 1 or 2 people in TGH, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can trust what people say. And I don't mean that in like to dismiss the person, but like these are big alliances, and so they have to run their decisions through large teams. And it takes evidence of like people giving their word and then keeping their word to build trust. And I'd say it's the same way with us, where like they don't know if we can be reliable until we've been reliable. But yeah, I think we're building trust and we're fixing relations, but I would say they're not fixed. Like, it's not done. It's a work in progress. And I think there are alliances like giant orange alliances, where how do I put it? They've too easily thought their relations were mended between them and other great powers, when that hasn't been the case. Not speaking of us there, speaking of like their relations with other people. So relations are always a constant developing thing, an evolving, a living thing. Anyway, so next question. What, if any, impact will it have on us economically? Well, if we get dragged into a bunch of wars, it will have a very negative effect. If we don't get dragged into wars, it will have no effect whatsoever. Beyond that, I don't know. We will find out. The new city update is awesome, and yeah, hopefully maybe they'll lend some advice on that. Our economy is pretty good though, I think. So, wide rose and not any other sphere. That's a good one. So, we were paperless for like ages, and then when we came back to the game, we signed TFP, Singularity, Aurora, and like a handful of other alliances. And now we're like allied to like House Stark and Gato and stuff. I think we've actually we've worked with like lots of different alliances so far, and I think we actually have pretty good relations with a lot of people. So yeah, I think we're just going through the motions, working with people we haven't worked with in a long time, working with new people. As for why, I guess like we aren't working with any of the other main powers right now, like a Syndicate or an EVH or an Eclipse. In a lot of cases, those alliances, I guess, just didn't really seem that interested. What's really interesting about being a top 30 alliance, actually, is that you're constantly reaching out to people to see if they're interested in signing treaties. So, for example, like a month ago or whatever, maybe we asked TFP for a treaty. We didn't, but maybe we did, right? And in that process, they'll go like, no. If you go back like a month later, even though the political landscape has changed a bit and you ask for a treaty again, it's sort of it's not nice for either party, right? Because they're just going to say no again. So to some extent, when you're in the top 30, you actually kind of wait for invitations to come to you, and those invitations are usually based off your merit or off your capabilities. So I think with the Rose Treaty, we asked them like 3 or 4 months ago. We were like, oh, maybe we should work together at some point. Or it's like just after the war. We were like, maybe we should work together at some point. And they were like, yeah, no, we're good. And so they walked away. And then they came back and they were like, oh, eventually we would like to work with you. And so that's a different process. And it's quite interesting. So if those other alliances had wanted us, you know, those other spheres had wanted us, they'd have reached out. I think at some point we will work with them. However, there are some interesting quirks as well. So, how do I put it? There are lots of alliances that will work with us, but they will never sign us. And this is similar to like BK and like Name Withheld, where they were just like all hardliners. Rose was one of those alliances that would work with us on like a variety of different issues, but they wouldn't sign us. And this was like for like 3 or 4 years. So I think them changing their stance is actually probably indicative that other alliances will eventually come around as well. But we aren't exactly in a hurry to force that, right? It actually, I think, if the Rose example is evidence of anything, it's that only happens after you've shown that you can deal a lot of damage to them if you're on the other side, and also you've worked together on a bunch of stuff. So, what was it specifically that caused us... Oh, next question. What was it specifically that caused us to set aside our differences and work together instead of staying as rivals? I think I said this earlier, but we like exercised our grievances. We got what we wanted. at least for us going into it, we don't have like a mutual enemy, or we don't have like an immediate short-term goal. We just wanted to work with them at some point. So yeah, there isn't anything, I guess, specifically that made us like overcome our differences. But yeah, we'll see. What impacts do you expect this to have on other major players and spheres? I don't expect there to be much, if any, impact. Like, we're actually not that large of an alliance. I think we're like top 15 or something. And for the most of this year, I think our priority is growing and like trying to maximize our use of this new city discount update. I don't really see people like maneuvering around us, I guess. Maybe, I guess you could say that like there's going to be some slight number differences and maybe like some wars, but even then it kind of depends. These treaties are non-chaining, so depending on how the wars like shape out, it could be that we end up not using the treaty, or it could be that the treaty is immensely important and then we take out like a major alliance on some other side. It's hard to tell. It sort of depends. What else is worth mentioning? Oh, I guess I should also mention like the treaties, because they're actually kind of interesting. You would not have seen some of these terms before, I think. So this one, I think, is a mirror of peace treaties with Rose and DGH. So it's kind of a continuation of that, and like a melding of the respect clause as well. The signatories agree not to meddle in each other's internal affairs or undermine their fundamental interests. This one I've put in like lots of treaties now, and I think people take it as a given, but it's really not. Like, a lot of allies undermine each other's fundamental interests. It's very broad strokes as well. That basically you can come to an ally and say, you're doing something here that might seem insignificant to you, but is like severely damaging our diplomacy, or our internals or whatever else. So yeah, very useful. Signatories agree not to feed each other overt disinformation. This is a quirk of the TGH treaty, because I didn't want to include an intelligence clause because of like how the treaty is structured. So we agree not to share disinformation, and if we want to share information, we can, but it's not obligatory. Yeah, so that's an OAP clause. I think OAP clauses are silly. I think the optional aggression component of the treaty is basically a leftover from cyber nations where you actually needed a reason to go to war, and in politics more, you don't need a reason, so you wouldn't need an optional aggression clause. Anyway, oh, this is another one. If there is a conflict between parties and their other allies, they are strongly encouraged to remain neutral. The amount of like disagreements I've had with allies, or like the amount of disagreements in spheres or between like allies when you're across spheres is crazy. So in this case, it reduces the amount of chaos we'll all have to deal with as much as possible. Oh yeah, and it's non-chaining. I think I said this earlier, but yeah, we don't have like these really strong relations with their other allies, and unless those other allies want to build those relations or like make some sort of arrangement with us for our support, we don't need to offer it. And I think that's sort of mutual. The Rose doesn't have really strong relations with the rest of our allies in Rising Tide, which is like Spectre's sphere. Like, they don't have a ton of connections to those people, and they don't want to be responsible for them. So yeah, non-chaining. Oh, and this. Signatories can withdraw from this treaty at their discretion. However, it is customary to provide 72 hours notice. So this is fun. Most treaties have a mandatory 72-hour clause, which is a little silly. It's a little bit superfluous, right? Because if you decide the relations have got so bad that you're going to cancel a treaty, you have no interest in fighting a war with those people for a month on the off chance someone attacks in that 72-hour period, right? So it makes much more sense to be able to go, well, we're canceling the treaty, and if you get hit in that 72-hour period, tough luck, right? You're on your own on that one. So you have discretion. And I think that's generally pretty good. I think people a lot of alliances have gotten in trouble, I think, recently, where they've been attacked or their allies have been attacked, and then they haven't defended, and they've paid this huge political price for that. When in some cases, they don't really need to, I guess. Like, they shouldn't need to fight the war, they shouldn't need to pay the political penalty. So in this case, yeah, we're removing the political penalty. And so we're going to work for each other, we're going to work with each other for however long we want to work with each other, and no longer. And this, very cool. I want to be able to maintain my my freedom of speech, so to speak. Yeah, I want to be able to continue making videos and saying what I want to say, regardless of what my allies think. And so the routine exalts and Prometheus exception is actually one method of accomplishing that, in that me and exalts like to debate in the news servers and so forth. And so we were allowed to continue arguing with each other and not undermine the treaty. And also, naturally, that allows me to say what I want to say about Rose when I want to say it. So very cool. What else is worth mentioning? I don't think there are any other, like, interesting terms. I discussed some of them just because, like, people don't really discuss treaties and they don't put a lot of thought into them very often. So yeah, that's some rationale behind some of the terms, at least from my perspective. You could probably, like, paint a much simpler picture. Like, it is MDP with an on-chaining clause, very cool, and the rest is flavor text. Oh, I should also mention, seeing as how, like, I'm not really going to mention it in other videos for a while, all of the spheres are changing. So I think it's Grumpy signed EVH, which was kind of surprising. A lot of people thought they would wait until after the current global. And I don't want to spoil all of the other spheres. In short, I think there should be 3 or 4 spheres. 3 or 4 distinct ones. I think some spheres are right now getting much bigger, and then they will downsize after these wars have ended. Singularity has also stated that it's going paperless, so yeah, I think we're going to see a much more interesting treaty web in a few months. Right now, it is kind of a massive mess. Oh, and also, if I haven't said it elsewhere, just because we're signing these people does not mean we're, like, entering their sphere. It does not mean we're, like, cutting all of these other people, right? We still have great relations with all these other alliances. We're going to try and maintain those for as long as we can, or as long as it's in our interest. Some of those treaties are much stronger than others, as you can probably assume. And yeah, it's kind of cool that we live in a tangled web environment where alliances have more independent foreign policies. What's it called? House Stark has signed Arkham and Sword Coast, alliances in very different orbits. And maybe they will split off and form their own, like, sphere or microblock or something. I doubt it. I would expect that they will sit in between spheres and work with those other alliances, and I think we are sort of very much doing the same thing, of looking out for our own interests and working with people where those interests align. Yeah, very cool. Looking forward to working with my new allies.